Many of these drugs that are available for lung cancer have really only been available and FDA approved in the past 10 years, including an increasing number that have been approved for other biomarkers in the past 5 years. These all are only possible if patients participate in clinical trials. We know that, unfortunately, when patients have metastatic lung cancer, generally this is not considered curable. At best, we can find treatments that are able to control things, hopefully control things for many, many years, just as my patients have had their cancer controlled. But inevitably, at some point, the cancer learns to develop resistance and the treatment that they're on stops working. And so in the setting where we don't yet have a cure for the cancer, it is important to always have more options available for treatment. So patients participating in clinical trials gives them access to drugs that may be revolutionary for their cancer as cancer treatments. But because they're still in clinical testing, they are not yet available as standard treatments. They're not readily available. The only way that one would be able to access these new drugs would be by participating in a clinical trial. So I always tell patients participating in a clinical trial in many ways is a strategy to expand the number of treatment options that you have available to you. I think there's a lot of hesitation in patients in general, but in particular in patients who are in different diverse populations, such as in the Asian population. So I think there is a lot of concern that participating in a clinical trial means that you are being experimented on. And while we are, what I like to explain to patients is that, in fact, when one participates in a clinical trial, you actually have many more safeguards and to ensure that we are taking care of you in the safest and best way possible. Because these drugs are in clinical testing, we are part of the reason for doing the clinical trial is to understand as much as we can about it. So that means patients come in for additional evaluation, for additional checkups. You may have more frequent CT scans so that we understand, so that we get a quicker look as to whether or not the drug is helping your condition or not. We do extra blood tests to make sure that your organ function is normal and safe. And so there are extra safeguards around when one participates in a clinical trial to make sure that we are taking the best possible care of you. But another concern is that that patients share with me is that they are concerned that they will be getting a lesser treatment, that they may be on a placebo. So for that, I always explain to them, every clinical trial design is different. We have some clinical trials in which all participants get the experimental treatment, get the clinical trial treatment. We have other clinical trials in which patients are assigned to either the clinical trial treatment or the best available standard treatment. Very few clinical trials, particularly for lung cancer, will have a placebo arm where you're not getting active treatment. And so it's important when you're considering a clinical trial to ask about these details and understand what are the different arms of the study. Most of the time for lung cancer clinical trials, there will be no placebo. Everyone will be getting active treatment. Finding an appropriate clinical trial is very difficult as a patient. It can be very overwhelming. There are certainly many websites that will list and allow you to search for clinical trials based on your condition. One popular website is clinicaltrials.gov. But those websites can be very difficult to navigate because you don't always know if your particular situation is appropriate for any given clinical trial. And sometimes it's hard to know the status of that clinical trial, whether or not they're accepting patients or not. I think one of the best ways to be able to find out what clinical trials are appropriate for a patient's condition would be to work with your oncologist because your oncologist will have physician networks within their practice, but also outside at academic centers to help you to find clinical trials and refer you to those academic centers for participation.